Hey guys, welcome back. In today's video, we are talking about the AMC suppression, the short loophole, trade settlement, and many more in this video. First, we're taking a look at this. A whole month of this nonsense for the AMC stock. How much can the stock be suppressed until the pressure is too great to control? So if you take a look at AMC's price, what you'll find is something very, very interesting. Essentially, AMC's price has been ranging within the price range. Now, that's of course very normal. But when you look at the prices ending at, things starts to get a bit weird. And we've talked about this. We've talked about how AMC had a 0% movement for 3 days in a row. And the chances of that happening was 1 in 1 trillion. And you can see there was multiple times of this. 2.71, 2.71, 2.65, 2.65. And this is something that we saw happening at every single day for AMC, and we've seen this happen multiple times. And remember, it isn't the fact it was just staying at that price. Price obviously had movement during the day, but it ended at the same price regardless. And that's what we talked about with how they're trying to suppress. You can see here 2.65 going to 2.68, but then went back to 2.65 and 2.65. Obviously, something is very, very off right here. And we've talked about how that's because of the suppression of what they're trying to do. Now, it's no surprise they're trying to control AMC. It's no surprise they're trying to suppress. When you look at another fundamental aspect of AMC, you can see AMC Entertainment opens 2 extra large format theaters in Kansas City, where we see that they have opened the first 2 extra large format theaters. And now remember, this is what we talked about with AMC's plan, with increasing, with how they go with the AMC Go plan, with how they're going to increase their infrastructures to obviously ultimately to increase their revenue and increase their profit. And we've also said that they expect to open up to 50 extra large format theaters at its locations by the end of 2025. So we can see multiple indications from this. Firstly, AMC is in an extremely healthy position. The very fact they are able to do this should let you understand, what is happening. Now, furthermore, is to also understand is that this potential comment here, I suggested before that AMC might be the Kansas City shuffle that the Roaring Kitty hinted at. Not sure how I missed this news, but it seems to align. Could GME have big news drop on the horizon? Now, firstly, the fundamentals is something to take into consideration. And if we're sidetracking off a little bit to talk about some of the potentials, some of the the possibilities, then this could obviously be one thing. We've always talked about the connection between Roaring Kitty and of course AMC. And like we said, AMC and GME has always been on the same side. Our enemies has always been the shorts. We're obviously here to take out the shorts. And so that's what I talked about with the correlation of this. Now I'm curious to hear what you guys think about this, and again, if we can see some collaboration between AMC and GME, then that would truly be some groundbreaking news. Furthermore, you can see a loophole in retro allows short sellers to naked short sell GME with billions of trades considered by security exchange as mistakes made in good faith. Industry-wide collusion. You can see a retro loophole for carriers exposing industry-wide collusions. So when we see these things, we talked about exactly the manipulation that is going on. We talked about how, firstly, market makers, short sellers, brokers, they're all working together. And we also talked about how regulation seems to never help out the retail. And this is also just another example of this, where they're saying that these exploits, that these loopholes that are being abused by these short sellers are considered as mistakes, when clearly they did it on purpose with the intent of exploiting retail. There wasn't any mistakes made behind that. And that's why we said, when we see these fines that are as tiny as $100,000. Now, again, $100,000 individually may sound like a lot to everyone, which again is obviously true. But a $100,000 fine to a company that's making $10 billion, then clearly something is not right here. The $100,000 fine isn't going to have any effect. If anyone gave me an opportunity to say, I have to pay you $100,000, but in exchange I get $10 billion, I'm sure everyone would take up that offer. And that's exactly what they're doing. And it's why we talked about the trade settlements needs to be enforced. And I know traders have spent hundreds of hours down the rabbit hole Ethereum created, and that rabbit hole is a minefield. So for those of you who want to take a look at this, feel free to do so. But just a brief explanation should let you see what we just talked about here and just how corrupt the industry is and why, we've seen this manipulation being kept as long, just as long as we've seen. FINRA runs and owns the dark pools OTCBB, XADF, OOTC, then launders trade through their own UTP platform. They funnel counterfeit shares into ETFs, pensions, and even the TSP. And that's what we are seeing. So when we talked about, these guys coming together to obviously exposing and exploiting the collusions, this is what we are witnessing. And that's why people, like we've seen with these short sellers, like we've seen with these market makers, get away with this because everyone is in on this. But it's precisely because of this. And again, some of the news that we've seen recently is that they can't keep this up for long. The longer they do this, the bigger the hole that they dug themselves into. Yes, they can kick the can down the road, but kicking the can down the road isn't the same as getting away. Getting away means that no matter what happens, there will be no consequences and there isn't any lingering effects. But kicking the can down the road means that eventually that consequence will get to them. And the longer they prolong this, the bigger the hole becomes. We talked about the billions of synthetics they've created and will continue to create as long as it's kept on. And the more synthetics in which they create, the more money in which they have to pay. And we can also see, some examples of, again, the short volume alert, where we are seeing AMC GME short volume going up. Earlier, when we talked about, naked short seller abusing the loophole, you can look at it as an example of short seller trying to exert downward pressure on GME with layered puts. These puts have been rolled to a new future date, again far out of the money. Playing games with puts and not going to end well for those shorting GME. It's the same thing. We understand that these short sellers are not in a good position. They are not understanding exactly what is going on. They think they can get away with it. Their understanding was that the retail would have sold a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago. They think that if we make some news, if we do, certain things, the retail will sell. But that is obviously not happening. And that's why they're getting afraid by the day. And that's why we've been seeing the short volume, not just for GME, but also for AMC going up by the day. Because they understand is that they can't keep this up. And you can see, we talked about, and everyone are always seeing these comments, people saying AMC, you shouldn't buy AMC. Aside from these articles that we're seeing, I also see in my comments, you shouldn't buy AMC, you shouldn't buy GME. Now, as always, none of this is ever financial advice, so do take it as a grain of salt. Make sure to do your own due diligence and research. I'm not here to tell you, I'm not here pointing a gun at you, telling you to buy AMC. Nor am I saying that you should believe what the news are saying, because the news are telling you to sell AMC, to stay away from AMC, to stay away from GME. But when you look at what's happening, and yesterday's video we showed institutions buying GME, institutions buying AMC. We've shown short sellers of AMC buying GME. Today we're seeing Northern Trust Corp has a 99.39 million position in GME, and just showcasing how institutions have not only held on to their GME positions throughout this whole time, they've actually added and accumulated more GME shares. So whilst these articles and these comments are saying that I'm making it out like AMC and GME is the worst stock in the world and that no one should ever be buying them, these institutions who are out here with only one purpose, to obviously make money, are actually buying AMC and GME. And ask yourself this, if these firms' sole purposes are to make money and then they're buying AMC and GME, what does that mean? Are they buying a stock to lose their money, or are they trying to buy a stock to make their money? And I think the answer is obviously very, very clear. And once again, when they pair it up with saying, well, GME's price hasn't gone up, AMC's price hasn't gone up, and again, you're just wasting your money, the reason for that is because we are seeing these dark pool orders. When people are saying that the price isn't going up, you have to make sure, is that because people are selling? Is that because the fundamentals aren't up to, what the worth should be? Or is there manipulation? When we take a look at AMC, the market sentiment is that people are buying. Whether it's retail, whether it's institutions, people are buying. When you look at the fundamentals, we are extremely undervalued. The fundamentals and the price does not reflect one another. The price is greatly under what it should be. So again, we know that it's not a fundamentals factor. So why is the price then going down? Well, that's because of the manipulation. That's because of the dark pool. That's because of what we're seeing here. When people are buying, the buyers aren't going into the market. It isn't having a positive impact. And so people are saying, you know, AMC price is going down because people are selling. Well, no. AMC's price is going down because all the buy orders are not hitting at all the lit exchange, but the sell orders are. Therefore, it's giving the illusion that the price is going down because there are more selling than there are more buys, when in reality, that isn't the case. But thanks guys for watching this video. I'll catch you guys next time.